wrestling fans in Canada. This is Tully Blanchard, one of the original Four Horsemen. And I'm doing an interview that you don't want to miss with Great North Wrestling. And just remember, always, the symbol of the horseman, the symbol of excellence, four fingers. Be the best at whatever you choose to be.
So we're here with WWE Hall of Famer Tully Blanchard. And I just want to start off, you were the son of Joe Blanchard, who's a famous wrestling promoter and wrestler in Texas. What was it like growing up the son of Joe Blanchard?
Well, it was, as you look back at it, and I've got children of my own now, it was pretty good. You know, my father was extremely involved with my athletics, my upbringing, and took a very, very big role in my developmental years, and I'm very fortunate. You know, especially the fundamental years, because when you look back on my life, it was my children and their mother. I was divorced after 9 years, and so I didn't get to be involved with my children's formative years in near the way that my father was. So I was very fortunate to be Joe Blanchard's son. So,
is it true that you were actually born in Canada?
Correct. I was born in Calgary.
And your father was trained in the dungeon?
He started there.
Okay.
I'm not sure just exactly how long that he worked. I know that he played for Edmonton Eskimos for 3 years, and then played for Calgary 1 year, and in the off season he taught school and started wrestling, and with his amateur background, that was kind of a logical progression for him.
For someone that doesn't know about your father's accomplishments in the wrestling business, do you want to just quickly go over some of the bigger accomplishments that he made?
Accomplishments like
titles that he won, or possibly large houses that he drew.
I don't know that I know all those.
Okay.
But you know, it was. I know that Dad and Fritz von Erich did a huge house at the baseball field in Arlington one time, and my dad and Fritz were collaborators in the wrestling business when the Dallas territory got formed, and back in the mid-'60s, and my dad was probably more of his mark was probably made more on the promotion end than it was on the performance end, although he was very well liked, and he learned very quickly that the real money was made on the promotion end, not on the performance end. And so he went to like 60. He quit touring territories and started to work for the booking office in Indianapolis. And then 4 years later is when we moved to Texas, and he started in the promotion end.
And you were saying yesterday his biggest gross year was $3 billion. I'm going to guess that was probably in the 70s or 80s.
That was I came back from North Carolina at the end of 1977, So it would have been 79 or 80 probably. And we had, that's when I was the only promoter's son that I know of in the wrestling business who wrestled and became a heel. And because that was not the norm. And so I wrestled Wahoo. Wahoo was our booker, Wahoo McDaniels, and so wrestled him, and then Gina Hernandez came to work for us, and we had a good couple of year period in there, but we did 3 million one year, and I remember that, and it was, guys loved working for us. I mean, we had guys that were on the opening match making $900 a week, and that was, in the 70s, that was pretty strong money, and it was, I know that I made enough money to buy a nice house, and back when interest rates were 15%, I get the genius idea to go buy an expensive house, which was a little bit crazy. But anyway, you live and learn.
And when you were young, did you work at your dad's events in any odd jobs?
Oh yeah, I mean, I did. I started at 10 years old, going to the mall and putting flyers on people's cars, and selling peanuts, and I was carrying around 10 buckets with glass soft drinks in them, and filling them up in cups, and wasn't old enough to sell beer. The beer guys made all the money, but it was. And then when I got older, during the summer, and they had the arena that my dad's promotion owned got, I'm not sure what it's called for when the city government takes your land to build a road, but they took that land, and so we ended up going to the municipal auditorium in San Antonio, and we had to put the ring up and take the ring down every week, and so that was also one of my jobs, and it 2 stories up through the floor down in the basement, you'd carry every piece. It was a pretty strong 2-man job, and so I did that, and then I refereed in the off season when I was going to college for 3 years, and so there's just not much that I've missed in the wrestling business.
And you had a very successful football career. I understand you held a couple of records. You want to just go over your
I don't know if I had any records. I was fortunate to play and started for 3 years in my high school, and then I went to Southern Methodist University out of high school, which is in Dallas, and
I heard Ric Flair say you were the -- something in the country. Were you the?
My senior year in high school, I actually, and I forget what magazine I read it in, but I had a 46-yard average punting, and that was supposedly I led the nation in high school with that. Wahoo McDaniels had worked with me, and he had punted in the NFL, and had taught me some nice little things about punting, and I should have pursued that a little bit more, and didn't realize that you could actually make a career and just punt, and without playing football. So I had some skewed thought process going on when I was a young guy, but played football at SMU. Then Hayden Fry got fired the middle of my freshman year, and new coach came in and things didn't work out. So I ended up transferring to West Texas State, which is probably the university that has more professional wrestling stars come out of it. I think I counted one time that are 10, 12 guys that came out of there. And just quickly off the top of my head, you got Stan Hansen, you got Bruiser Brody, you got Ted DiBiase, you got Tito Santana, you've got me, you've got the Funk Brothers, Terry and Dory, both went to school there.
Didn't they allow Dick Murdoch for some reason to play in the alumni games, even though he didn't?
When I was there, I don't remember Murdoch. I remember Murdoch coming to the games, but I don't remember him playing in the alumni game. But I know he was there, and but it was a fun time of my life. The 3 years that I lived in Canyon, and Terry Funk was the world champion at the time, and I actually got to house sit for him. Make sure his house stayed okay. And my roommate, John Ayers, who actually had a tremendous pro career playing for the 49ers and a couple of Super Bowls and stuff, that he and I would go out to Terry's house and camp out and stroll back into, it was only 6 miles back to the campus. And it was a very, very fun time in my life, and it was a good finish to my football career before my wrestling career started, and so it was a good thing.
And who actually trained you for your pro wrestling career?
Well, certainly my dad started my training. Jose Lothario worked with me. And
is that the same Jose that trained Shawn Michaels later on?
Jose had a lot of input into Shawn Michaels. Jose was just a tremendous performer, and then it was really just on the job training. I mean, you'd go in the ring and wrestle with a lot of guys, and back in the late 70s, you had old timers that were good performers that were kind of in the twilight part of their careers, that had a lot of knowledge, that you'd go out and wrestle for 20, 30 minutes a night with them, and you either learned or you got smacked around a little bit. I'm not sure that's the way it is today, but I'm not that close to the startup and stuff like that.
Did you find some people were harder on you because you were the promoter's son, or was it the other way around?
I think that maybe some guys, but for the most part, no, because the simple reason I was not put, when I graduated, my in-the-ring stuff started like this. In 1976, they changed the rules for amateurs in athletics. The NCAA said that you could be a professional in one sport and an amateur in another. So I went to, not my dad's territory, I went to Georgia and worked for Georgia Championship Wrestling for a month, and was just on the road and just a guy. You know, I was fortunate to get a job and be able to work for a month and then go back and play football my senior year and so that worked. And then I finished all my requirements for graduation at midterm, and then I went to Florida. So I was not working for my dad, even though my dad was in the promotion. I wasn't the promoter's kid being given anything. I was working for somebody else. And I was very, very fortunate that Eddie Graham took an interest in me, and he was one of the great ring psychologists in the wrestling business. And he worked out with me for 5 months, and they just didn't pay really, really well, and it was hard to make ends meet, just getting out of college and stuff like that. And so I switched territories and went to Wahoo McDaniels. Got me booked up in North Carolina.
Okay.
And a lot of my dad started Jack Mulligan and some stuff like that, and their business was just phenomenal in North and South Carolina and Virginia. And so I worked up there and did really well the rest of that year in 1977, and then took that knowledge from those two territories, how they did TVs, how they did all the stuff, and took it back to San Antonio to help my dad's company. And so we worked to get our company better, and that was in 78 through 84. I worked for my dad's company, Southwest Championship Wrestling, and that's in the early 80s when my dad started on the USA Network. He was the first wrestling show on the USA Network.
Okay, before Vince.
Before Vince, and it was, we didn't have the knowledge to really make the television show pay for itself. That was really the downfall of our company, because we'd had success, we'd had big money, we were paying guys a lot of money. Somehow I guess we thought that guys wouldn't work for us if we didn't pay them a lot. But we had too much money going out in payroll. But when we had to pay $7,000 a week to be on television on the USA Network, and that wasn't generating any money. You know, we didn't have all the mail order this and that stuff going on, and didn't have that knowledge, and all the other territories there wasn't a lot of cohesiveness at that time.
Were you the booker at that time as well for your father's team?
I was for a period. Dick Slater was, Wahoo was, then Dick Slater was, Buck Robley was, then I was, and then the Bushwhackers were for a little while, and I was going through a lot of insanity in my personal life, and I ended up leaving and going to North Carolina. Or actually, I left and went to Kansas City first, and then I went to North Carolina in '84.
And I understand before you left, you had some matches tag teaming with your father against Terry and Dory Funk. There's stuff written about that on the internet anyway, so maybe.
Well, see, my dad always stayed babyface.
Right.
And I was a heel.
Right.
And the Funks were baby faces. I wrestled the Funks.
Okay.
But my dad and I, the only time I ever remember him being in the ring with me as a tag team was out in North Carolina when I was just first starting.
And what are your thoughts on wrestling the Funks? They're so legendary in this business.
Oh, I am. My career would not be what it is without wrestling the Funks, without wrestling Wahoo McDaniels, without wrestling the guys at that level. And I mean, if you want your young career to be impacted, be told that you're going to wrestle for 60 minutes in your hometown against the world champion and get, you've never gone 60 minutes before, and have the world champion, probably the most abuse I ever had as being a promoter's kid, except for the Funks were promoters' kids too. But Dory was, I guess, about the 35-minute mark, and I was out of gas, and 25 minutes to go, and have the world champion just slap you on top of the head and tell you to get up, kid. It's a little humbling, but that changed my career, because I then knew that conditioning was so valuable to your performance level, and it changed my whole mental process on how to get ready and prepare to be a professional wrestler, and it really changed my career.
And you were also a tag team with Gino Hernandez, as you touched on before. What was he like as a person, and what's your opinion on some people thinking that he may have been murdered due to the cocaine being found in his stomach?
Well, I tell you, it is. I knew Gino pretty well. I think that's certainly a possibility. I know that he liked to gamble a lot, and but he was working for Dallas. He and I had already finished, but not too long before that happened, when I had just gone to North Carolina, we tried to hire him and get him to come to North Carolina. He may still be alive and have a great career and be on the interview with me if he'd have moved out there. But he liked Dallas and liked his lifestyle there, and but he was a tremendous talent, and there's a lot of great matches that he would have ended up having that were cut short when he was when his life ended, and it was tragic. It was. Gino's not here with us, but it's just as tragic as when Magnum's career came to an end because of the car wreck, and it's things like that are just impactful to people that were close to him. So.
And how did you end up actually getting booked with Jim Crockett Promotions? Because that was one of the biggest companies at that time when you switched over there.
Well, I had actually quit wrestling because I was trying to get off drugs and trying to get some insanity stuff gone and in my life. And
just to get onto that for 1 second, I didn't realize you started the drugs like in Texas, I guess, in that time. So it started even before you were with Crockett Promotions.
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and it was so I had gone to work for the Kansas City office, and that would have been the end of 1983, because I had lost my house. I had didn't have any money, and the quickest way for me to regroup was to perform in wrestling, because I had already, I'd been wrestling for about 8 years by then, 6, 7 years, something. And if I got over someplace, income could quickly increase, and that was going to fix some things. And so I went to Kansas City. I got booked up there and started working with Buzz Sawyer, and Buck Robley was the booker, and golly, it was cold, and it was in December. I think I started Christmas Day up there in 1983. And
pay was low too there, wasn't it?
Oh,
overall?
It was. Business was not good. Pay was low. There's not a whole lot of. There were nice guys up there, but it was brutal.
I think I've heard Flair say he always hated going there for that.
Oh,
period.
he came there one of my weeks, and I traveled with him for a week and had some fun. But I mean, the matches were the arenas were, a big crowd was not a good crowd, and business jumped when Flair came, and so at the end of January, I forget just exactly what the date was, but once a month they ran St. Louis out of the Kansas City office, and so I got booked on that card with the angle that with Buzz Tyler, and so St. Louis had a big crowd. I mean, the champion was there, and Dory Funk Jr. was the booker in North Carolina at the time, and Jim Crockett was there, and all that kind of stuff. And Buzz Tyler and I had a great match. So they invited me to meet them at the Marriott where they were staying and have some cocktails afterwards. And after a couple of cocktails, I looked at Jimmy, because I'd already worked for him for 8 months when I first started. And I said, Jimmy, I said, if you'll hire me, I'll make you a lot of money. And he said, well, we'll talk about that on Monday when we're not drinking. So I called them and we talked, and they offered me a job. So I gave my notice in Kansas City and packed up the middle of February 1984 and drove to North Carolina. And their company at that time was not doing good business. It was really not.
Okay.
And
was Flair the top guy?
Well, Flair was the world champion.
Okay.
So he was traveling.
Oh, okay. So that's why.
Okay. Wahoo McDaniels was there. I mean, they had some good talent, but they had I forget just exactly. Jay Youngblood was there, and Steamboat I think had gone to New York at the time, and or he might have been there too, or he might have been somewhere else.
I think he may have been there right at the start, because I think when you won the TV title, you had a couple matches with him.
Yeah, we had Starrcade 1984. I wrestled Steamboat, so he was not. I forget where he was when I first got there. He wasn't there, taking time off, or in Japan or something. I'm not sure. But the business was not really good, and I beat Jay Youngblood for the TV title not too long in there, and Paul Jones started as my manager for a little while. They thought that was going to elevate me up the card quicker, and then in July, maybe August, in there. I mean, there's probably records of when it actually happened, but they let Dory Funk Jr. go as the booker, and they actually had a booker for every state, and then Dory Jr. was the head booker.
Okay.
And Wahoo was one of the states. Ernie Ladd was one of the states, and Gary Hart was one of the states.
'Cause they had just quickly 3 towns a night or something back then, right?
Yeah. We had 2 for sure, sometimes 3, but they had, like, Wahoo booked Virginia, and Gary booked, I think, North Carolina, and I think Ernie Ladd was South Carolina, I think. And so there was some confusion going on that was causing their businesses to be down. Because when I was there, when I first started, I mean, it was sellouts every night. Greensboro was just jammed and everything. So we made some adjustments when Dusty came in, and Dusty was trying to put his finger on all the right things to go, and he and I had, he asked to speak to me one night, and just very, very simply, asked me, because I had been a booker, and what would you do? I said, well, I'd always been told, if you need to get things going, you always put the best against the best. And so we had, Flair had not sure just exactly where he was with the World Championship and traveling, because it might have been one of those times that he let it, where he wasn't the champion for a little while. But Wahoo got matched with Flair, and Dusty and I got matched together, and that started turning the company around. And Blackjack Mulligan got involved for a little bit. I know that the first sellout when I went back at the Greensboro Coliseum was Flair and Mulligan against me and Wahoo. And Wahoo had switched heel for a little while, and that kind of catalyst got us going. And then once the territory started going, then it was easy to hire people, and that's when Magnum came in, and Arn came in, and the Rock and Roll Express came in. Over the next year, we put together a tremendous array of talent that were second to none. I mean, the guys could perform and draw money, and we were running 2 and 3 towns a night, and every one of them was drawing. And then by the end of 1985, and the territory was just exploding. Cable television, we had actually bought, Jim Crockett had bought the TV rights to the Superstation in Atlanta from New York, from Vince.
Okay.
Because Vince didn't want to go down there and do a TV show in the studio every
Which
week.
was part of the deal, I guess.
Which was a deal breaker.
How did you end up with Baby Doll as your manager?
Well, we came up with, instead of having another manager, having a valet, and instead of just bringing one in, we had a perfect 10 contest, and get on TV every week and said, I'm looking for the world's perfect woman that I can travel with and show off and put on television and blah, 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 blah. We did that for, I guess, 6 weeks, 2 months, something like that. And the pictures and everything that got sent in were just pretty, it was pretty neat time. And, and Nicola Roberts was the perfect woman for it.
Was she literally someone that had applied through the contest?
No, she was second generation. Her mom and dad both wrestled, and they promoted in Lubbock for the Funks.
Okay.
And she was just starting her wrestling career, and so we were in 1984. I think it was Christmas week. We had, because of Eddie Graham's relationship with Dusty, we had gone down to do a Christmas week thing in Florida to help Eddie Graham. And it was, Nicola was booked down there. And the minute I saw her and Dusty saw her, we knew who Baby Doll was.
And the main thing people remember about that Baby Doll having her around was the infamous slap angle that you guys did. And I'm just wondering, was that a booking idea of Dusty's and yours combined, or whose idea was it for that?
For when I slapped her?
Yeah.
No, we were switching her babyface.
Right.
So I mean, it was a very logical way to do it. I'm not sure who came up with the idea, but it was a way to switch her babyface. It was exciting. It was a way to get J.J. Dillon as my manager and move the company along.
What was the fan reaction to that when that happened?
It was, striking a woman, even though she was tougher than me, was still pretty raunchy. But
did you have any issues with fan attacks around that time?
we had, there were a couple of times that I'd had people throw stuff through windows of my car windows, leaving buildings when she was my valet. And then there were times at the arenas that, her getting attacked outside the ring, which was pretty tough. I know in Hampton, Virginia, she got attacked by some guy and she knocked him out. So then we had to stay and press. He got whipped by a woman. He was a Navy guy. He got beat up by a woman. Then she had him arrested.
That's hilarious.
Oh.
And you mentioned, of course, J.J. Dillon became your manager after that. That led into the Four Horsemen, but you touched on Flair a couple times. You want to just go over your friendship and a bit of your history with Flair up to that point?
Yeah, I mean, it was, whenever Flair was in town and we would hang out and although it was because Flair was more of a babyface character type guy as a heel, and therefore in '84 I wrestled him one time, and then wrestled him in that tag match, bull rope strap match in Greensboro. Who was I strapped to? I may have been strapped to Mulligan. I don't remember. But but when he switched to heel, then it was, we hung out a little more, and then certainly when the start of the Horseman thing, because we weren't, but I mean we started having some 6-man tags and then 8-man tags, and then we did, and then when the Horseman thing clicked, it was pretty nifty.
And you mentioned it yesterday, the Horseman thing began out of one of those 8-man tag promos.
Absolutely. And the thing that was so dynamic, I think, about the Horsemen and even the way we did business at that time and the way we did TV production. You may know who you're wrestling, you may know what the match was, but we were not exactly told, okay, you need to go out here and say this. It was left up to your creativity. And I think that when you go back and look at the old matches and interviews, that, and I know Dave Meltzer talked about it in a private conversation with me yesterday, was just how good those interviews from the 80s were. And when you think about, okay, you four guys go out there, you've got 3 minutes.
Yeah.
You know, and you've got Arn and I wrestling somebody else, and Flair wrestling somebody, and Barry and JJ, you know, all sharing the same 3 minutes or 4 minutes, and the creativity, and then how everybody just worked together and blended it, because we didn't sit around in a room and say, okay, you know, you're going to talk and you're going to talk, and it didn't function like that, and didn't have to have writers and all that stuff, and the money that was generated out of the creativity of the talent probably will never get the credit that is due. But it was, and it was what it was. But I mean, the TV shows flowed, the TV shows were good, and you knew they were good because the buildings were full.
And you guys were all similar to your characters in real life, weren't
Oh,
you?
absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it is, I know very few people that can be really good at what they do if they're having to be an absolutely just character over here, real life over here. I mean, it's just an enlargement. I mean, Flair is Flair. He just, on television, he just got to be a bigger Flair.
What was your average sleep every night during that time period at the
Oh,
Horseman's Peak?
that was, I mean, it's very, very misled of how crazy and wild things were, because our schedule was so hard, and we were very responsible. But, you know, if we were in Chicago, the snuggery and stuff happened. You know, if we were somewhere else, you know, in Baltimore, it wasn't a big party, but it was Italian food at Sabatino's. You know, and as you went around the country, there were different things and different things that you like to do. And most of the time, I mean, you think about getting off work at 10:30 at night. You know, it took a little while to unwind and eat, and, you know, a few beers or a few cocktails or something, and go to bed. And it was pretty sensible. Usually we were up the next day, if we weren't traveling, till later. I mean, we were in the gym by 9 o'clock in the morning. You know, so I mean, we're not just a bunch of sleep-deprived idiots that sometimes gets alluded to, but.
And despite being heels, because you guys were considered so cool, other than possibly Ole, you guys were actually cheered a lot. What percentage of the crowd would you say was on your side during live events?
I don't know that we were cheered a lot. I mean, we were
the college kids, perhaps.
We were cheered. There was a segment of people that liked us. There were a lot of people that respected our abilities, but most people disliked us, except maybe in Philadelphia. Philadelphia was it was kind of a mixed crowd. It was just, but they don't like anybody. So I mean, that's a different culture up there. But usually it was not difficult. Johnny Valentine, and he was one of the all-time greats. He told me one time in a private conversation, he said, if they respect you, they'll hate you even more. So the thing that I always strived for, and the group of guys that we had, we strived for great performance. People cannot deny great performance, and they know and they knew what they were watching. So therefore, they respected our abilities. They disliked us even more. And now, after the fact, almost 25 years, and you go to a number of autograph shows and you get to talk to the fans like you never did in an arena, you hear the things that touched them and the things that motivated them, and how many times that, God, I just love to hate you. God, I hated you. And, but now, the passage of time, they like you because you got in and created that kind of an emotional experience for them and marked their childhoods or their teenage years. And it's just a confirmation that what you did was memorable, and it's very rewarding.
And you're most remembered as a singles wrestler from that period of time for your matches against Magnum TA, which everyone still talks about to this day. What do you think made you guys click so well together?
Well, I think that you talk. You've got two people that want to strive for excellence. You've got two people that are driven. You've got two people that had tremendous intensity, and I mean, it was just easy for us. I mean, it was like Terry said yesterday at the question and answer period. I mean, he wanted to be the very best babyface. I wanted to be the very best heel that had ever been in the business, and you're striving to do that, and the intensity of the rivalry and the involvement of being the U.S. champion, and there was just great chemistry there that people got to view great matches every night someplace in the country for 8 months, and it was wonderful.
And everyone talks about the I Quit match. I think that was one of the first actually big-time publicized I Quit matches, because it was before the Terry Funk Ric Flair one took place. But whose idea was it to have that I Quit match in the cage, do you recall?
Probably Dusty's. I mean, I don't remember. I mean, that was, we
many years ago.
They set that out, and where we were going to go, and wasn't hard for me. Starrcade was going to sell out and be great, so.
And you also mentioned yesterday one of the reasons you were teamed with Arn after that was because Ole Anderson was fired. Do you recall why Ole was fired?
No, he did something and said something or something, and somebody in Atlanta got cranked up, or he bowed up to I don't know, but I know that they let him go.
And I assume you already were pretty good friends with Arn, so you didn't mind.
Well, I mean, it was what it was, and I mean, it was the Horseman thing had already started clicking, so I mean, it was crazy not to continue with it, but it was, we talked about that yesterday. The next version was trying to get Luger in and up to star status in a hurry.
Right.
And
because Barry left for WWE.
Yeah, Barry had gone, and but then Barry came back, and all that stuff happened, and then when Barry switched on Luger and Barry came part of the Horsemen, that's when the dynamics of Arn and I really started to change, because now you had a guy that could perform as good as anybody in the business, Barry Windham. Now he was a single, and so the natural movement was for me and Arn.
Did you get along? Did you get along well with Luger?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, as well as anybody could. You know, I mean, we didn't try not to get along. So it was.
Yeah, because there's some conflicting stories about like how Lex Luger was in the dressing rooms, but I'm guessing because he got along well with Flair and you guys were a group that he probably wouldn't have given you guys much problems anyway.
Oh no, it was. I mean, he's a very bright guy, and he knew where the level of experience of the people that he was with, and he wasn't silly enough to bow up to that.
And what was it like wrestling the Road Warriors with when you were with Arn? Because they were still fairly unpolished in those days, I guess.
Oh no, they had their rough edges, but they always did. I mean, even when 10 years in, they had some rough edges, just because of what they were. But that's the ability that Arn and I had to flow in that, and they were easy for us to make look good. And you look at the matches; they just beat us up a lot.
And you wrestled so many great tag teams around that time, Rock and Roll Express and so forth. What was your favorite team to work with? I think you also worked with the Midnight Express.
Yeah, not much. We had just done that thing, and then when Arn and I left, was very abrupt. You know, that was not a planned exit, right. And so we were wrestling Bobby and Dennis, and switched the belts, and then we were gone.
What led to that departure? I heard it had to do something with the Road Warriors had contracts, Paul Ellering had contracts, but for some reason they weren't offering you and Arn contracts.
They were not offering Arn and I contracts, and we didn't exactly think that was good business on their part. And and so that's what opened the door, and they didn't try to get the door shut. So.
Didn't Jim Crockett, wasn't he also upset about you for some comment you made to the media or something like that?
No, the comment I made was when Turner's people were getting ready to buy Jim Crockett Promotions, and they were interviewing all the key people. They asked me questions, and I made some comments because I didn't know secrets, I just knew the trends.
Right.
And so, you know, there's so many different things that were coming into the mix, the no money, and I didn't say anything to be harmful. I just told him, I said, we this, and this is why this happened. And Crockett called me on the phone and told me that I wasn't loyal. And that really irritated me. I mean, when you travel every night, you bleed every night, and you work 30 minutes every night, and tell me that I'm not loyal, you know, and oh my gosh. So I decided to that then we went to work, and we were in Houston, and the next week's travel plans came out, and JJ looked at me and said, they've taken you off the jet, so they were spanking me.
Right, because there was a private jet for the stars in those days.
And so I was supposed to make all these bookings and drive like the old days, and everybody else was on the jet. And so I said, okay. I said, do you want the championship belts tonight in Houston or tomorrow in Philadelphia? Because I quit. And
had you already spoken to WWE at that time?
Yes.
Or you were just, okay. Had they been contacting you in the past? Because I know that they had talked to Flair a few times.
They sent a word out to Arn and I went up and met with Vince. Probably a month, 2 months before that. But that was the straw that broke the camel's back. I mean, you know, because telling the truth is telling the truth.
What were the differences between the two companies that you noticed when you jumped between WWE and NWA?
Well, wrestling is wrestling, and matches are matches. The biggest difference was TV production, and I mean that they weren't, and then interviews, because they tried to have script writers and stuff like that, which I didn't flow well in that. So I mean that was a kind of a hard thing for us. But the wrestling fans were the wrestling fans, and it was you know, the switch wasn't very difficult.
Did you get along well with Bobby Heenan?
Oh yeah, I've known Heenan forever. When he was Nick Bockwinkel's champion, and they used to come down and wrestle for my dad, and I've known Heenan since I was a youngster.
And you won the tag titles fairly quickly from Demolition, who were really over at that time.
Right.
What are your memories of those matches with them?
They were great matches, you know, being on Saturday night's main event was a big deal, you know. And I know that in 1989 we wrestled on 4 of the 5 Saturday night's main events, and Hogan wrestled on all 5 of them, and we got put in the spot right after Hogan because the ratings, instead of spiking when Hogan was on and then falling immediately when we were on the next match, the ratings stayed up. And that is from Dick Ebersol. I had a number of conversations with him because he was at the TV tapings.
And he was head of NBC, right? For those that don't know, or
right.
In charge of the production.
Of the NBC Sports. And I think he actually came up with Saturday Night Live and all kinds of things.
Because Saturday night's main event preempted Saturday Night Live.
No, it came on after Saturday Night Live.
Okay.
And it was, but it was, you know, it was a tremendous place to be, and you know, oftentimes you don't, when something like that is kind of going on, you don't really grasp the impact of it. And I do know that we liked being on Saturday night's main event because we got paid a lot more for TV than.
Would you say that's when your celebrity was at an all-time peak, when you were on those Saturday night's main events?
No, I don't think so. I think that the people at Crockett and WCW really didn't understand their penetration to the country, because the other company had New York City and things like that. but it was when you can walk through Chicago O'Hare Airport, and flair is one thing, bleach blonde hair, Arn Anderson, 270-pound guy, but I mean there's a number of 270-pound guys, but I was 220. There's a whole bunch of 220-pound guys in a suit with glasses on. I mean, I just look like a business guy. And I could be by myself and be walking through Chicago O'Hare Airport, and you'd see a businessman. He wouldn't stop and look at you. He wouldn't make a comment. Just shoot four fingers at you. That's penetration. That's people. That's fringe fans. That's fans that wouldn't go to an arena. That's a lot of star power, and it was neat to be part of that, and being part of the overall impact of all the guys. It was so it was just a great period.
And I don't specifically recall, but I'm wondering if you wrestled the Hart Foundation at all when you guys were in WWE.
Yeah, we wrestled them at SummerSlam.
Okay. SummerSlam 89, right?
89, yeah.
And what were they like to work with?
Kind of like the Road Warriors.
Oh, really?
Jim the Anvil could beat you up a little bit, and Brett was a great talent. Both of them were great talents, but I mean it was they were definitely solid.
And we're obviously a Canadian company. We got a lot of people that are interested in this subject, so I'll just ask you briefly what your opinion of the whole Montreal screw job thing was with Brett.
Well, I wasn't working with the company at the time, and really don't know, what it is. It's difficult for being in the ring. I'd always, everything was set before I went to the ring. I wasn't involved in anything like that, and don't really know how in the world it would make happen. But I'm sure that it was probably done. I know Brett, and I know Sean, and be a very, very awkward situation to be either one of the guys.
Right. And I've heard that before the drug test failure, both you and I were actually thinking of going back to NWA anyways. Was there any truth to that?
Oh, absolutely. We were going back. We had already negotiated a deal for $750,000. And then I flunked the drug test, and I got suspended, and we'd already given our notice. I got suspended November 2nd, and we were leaving after Survivor Series. So I missed Survivor Series and the rest of that month. Arn went back, and
had they even been testing for drugs at that long at that point? Because it seems like in the 80s there was
drugs plural is not exactly what they were testing for. They were testing for cocaine usage.
There was no steroid testing, obviously, in that time.
No. And, if you remember back they had some incidences with people at airports and hotels and stuff like that where people were having roid rage. And cocaine, anybody that's ever done cocaine, makes you kind of paranoid. Well, paranoid and real strong guys don't flow well together. So, if you were on the roids and you were taking sedatives and other things, I don't know of anybody ever testing for anything like that.
Right.
But they were testing for cocaine, and that's what I flunked. and it was my fault, and it had great impact on my career because it was over with.
And you were at your peak, really.
And oh yeah, and I was 35 years old, and it was kind of silly for nobody to hire me after that. But I'm the only guy that ever flunked a drug test that never got hired back. But me flunking the drug test is what caused me to meet Christ and changed my life and got me to the point where I am today. And that would never have happened without that.
Why did WCW hold that against you, even though they were a different company?
Don't know.
That's strange.
They'd have to, when everybody that they worked for, I think they tested 38 guys and had 36 flunk a drug test right after that. And so.
Could have possibly been a grudge over
Don't know. I mean, I don't know Jim Hurd, you know, when Turner bought the company and all that kind of stuff, and you start working into corporate stuff.
And around the time that they made the terrible mistake of putting Paul Roma in the Four Horsemen, they were almost hinting that you were going to be returning. Did they ever actually talk to you about returning?
They did, and they actually got an absolute no for the money that they offered me, and I did send that letter registered to them that I will not be there. And they just continued to push it on television and the hint. And I tell you, it's the most unfair thing that you ever could be part of, to send Paul Roma or anybody else out in that situation.
Right.
And
it was just not enough money for you, the offer that they had made.
Oh, they didn't offer me anything. I mean, it was $500 a day. It was crazy. And the money that they were paying
Sid for is ridiculous.
Or anybody. I mean, it was crazy.
And what do you think about them putting Paul Roma in the Four Horsemen? Because it was always very strong wrestlers in the Horsemen until that time, and I don't think he had ever really been over.
Well, the Horsemen, as we said yesterday, when the Horseman thing never worked if you didn't have Rick, Arn, and myself. It got some traction when Arn came back from New York and I didn't, because you now had two of the three. But it still never even was close to what it once was. And I've always said in interviews that you have a chemical compound, and it requires this, this, and this. And you can't keep putting something else instead of what makes it work.
Right.
And, it's just the chemistry of us together.
Didn't they even put Sid as a member of the Four Horsemen at one point?
I don't know. I didn't watch much. I don't watch the product much now.
And I'm guessing you weren't there for this, but did Arn tell you about that incident that he had with Sid? Obviously, he must have, the whole stabbing thing.
Well, I didn't. Arn's never told me about it. I knew it happened. Which was just, I don't know how things like that get out of control like that, but it's just crazy. But I know that Arn's a double tough guy.
And you spent a very brief time in the AWA after WWE. Was that just paper appearance type deal thing?
Yeah.
Nothing serious?
No.
Were you dealing with Vern in that deal?
Yeah.
What did you think of him?
Well, I mean, I'd known Vern most of my life. My dad, was, and, it was a couple of shot deals.
And you came back for one match at the Slamboree pay-per-view in '94, I believe, and it was a very good match. Was that always just going to be a one-time deal, or?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think so. I mean, I actually would have liked them to offer me a job, but I think they got very, very mad because I wouldn't put Terry Funk over.
Right.
And
you were working on the independents, so you needed to keep.
Well, I mean, no, they didn't ask me that up front.
Oh, okay.
That was not, well, this is what we want you to do. And so when I got to the thing, I said, I'm not doing that. You know, Philadelphia was horseman territory.
Right.
But
didn't you outdraw WWE one time there when
that was the only time we were actually head up in the same town on the same night, and they had their A team, that Hogan and everybody at the Spectrum, and we were over at the auditorium, and in dollar amounts they did 106,000 and we did 150,000. And
wow.
But the one thing that showed you is that there was two different audiences. It wasn't the same wrestling audience, and which was kind of unique if you really start analyzing it.
And many people don't know that you actually did some appearances for ECW.
Right.
What were your memories of working for that company and the matches you had there with Shane Douglas?
Well, I know that it was I'd been gone long enough that I became a babyface instead of a heel. But, you know, I mean, it was a great match for about 35 minutes with Shane Douglas. And then, because we had to do a 60-minute match, the last 25 minutes was a struggle. But Shane was a great guy and still is. And Paul was, I mean, I always got paid. And
what do you think of him? Everyone always claims that he's a genius and has this brilliant wrestling mind.
Well, I mean, he's made a lot of things happen that a lot of other people didn't, and he's always been. I mean, he's a great manager and was successful with ECW, and so.
And you fought Stan Lane on this very infamous Heroes of Wrestling pay-per-view that Jake the Snake ended up showing up hammered on, and there was a lot of bizarre stuff going on. Did you enjoy that match? Because from what I recall, it was a pretty good match. And what did you think of that whole almost bizarre pay-per-view that took place? It was at a casino, I believe.
Yeah, down in Mississippi. Yeah. And I think that Stan and I had a pretty decent match. The rest of the dynamics I tried to avoid without getting into a bunch of details. I was going through a massive personal issues at that time. I was a little distracted and wasn't really too concerned with wrestling at the time, so.
And I don't really want to get into this too much, but how did Magnum TA end up marrying your ex-wife? Because it just seems...
You'd have to ask them that.
Yeah. It's interesting that you were like his biggest rival and that ended up happening. But and you are retired now from wrestling, from what I understand.
Oh, God, I've been retired. I mean, I've only wrestled maybe 10 times since my full time.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's...
So when did you decide to stop taking wrestling bookings and call it a career?
Well, I wrestled at some fan convention thing, and they had a very bad ring, and I hurt my back. I said, that's crazy. And then I did only autograph appearances and maybe referee or a managed type deal. And I ran into a match not too long ago, a couple of years, I think, when Tessa was just first starting. And they wanted me to jump in the ring, and so I said, okay. And then I tore my bicep, so I'm not getting back in the ring anymore, ever. I'll talk about it, but that's it.
And they let us film Tessa's match the other night, and I was pretty impressed by her performance. What do you think of having a third-generation Blanchard in the family?
Well, I never set out to be a star wrestler. I mean, it happened, and then I pursued it. And this is a dream that is Tessa has grabbed, and I support her and have confidence in her, and she's doing really, really well, and the dynamics of the business are different. I know that she's getting ready to go to Japan, and she's, getting bookings all over the place, and seems to be doing well monetarily. And what else can you do as you approach your 21st birthday?
She's still very young, obviously, and doing well for herself. And we know that Ric Flair's daughter has been a huge success in the WWE so far.
Right.
Do you think there's a good possibility we could see your daughter in there in the future?
I don't know. I know that she's that's a dream of hers, and I'll support that. And I hope she accomplishes her dreams.
And you were inducted in the WWE Hall of Fame in 2012 as part of the Four Horsemen group,
Right.
as you mentioned. Do you want to just give your thoughts on being inducted into that Hall of Fame?
Well, I was inducted into the NWA Hall of Fame in 2009, which didn't have quite the pomp and circumstance, but it was a tremendous weekend and tremendous night. It was, there were over 12,000 people at the induction. I know that the other people that were there at the same time were great talents in the wrestling business. And my children got to see it, and that they had never really been around that, and me, because they weren't alive when I did that. And so it was a tremendous evening, and time for that.
And you were also an agent briefly in the WWE, is that right?
No. I was applying. They'd asked me to come up, and they had offered me a job.
Similar to Arn's, I guess.
They said I could be an agent, I could be a trainer, I could be one of the writers, kind of but I mean, there was, when nobody talks about money, you don't have a job yet.
Right.
So I mean, it was more of an interview.
Okay.
And then that was an unsuccessful evening. So.
And finally, there's lots of things about your preaching on the internet, but are you still in the ministry? And do you want to just tell us a bit about your work in that field? I understand you go to prisons.
Well, I've spent the last 21 years going in and out of prisons all over the country with Bill Glass, who played defensive end for the Cleveland Browns, was an All-American at Baylor. And it's been just a phenomenal period of my life. It's not glamorous. It's not something that you run around and see on television all the time. But we were reaching people that needed somebody to go in and tell them that, it's okay to screw up and second chances are available. And if you allow Christ into your life, he'll change your heart and change the direction of your life. And just as he did that for me. And that is still possible for anybody watching this, talking about wrestling. If your life isn't going where you want it to go, you just do what I did. I said 5 words. I said, Jesus, take over my life. And he did, and took me in a complete different direction. And it wasn't back to wrestling, which is, if you think about everybody that's flunked a drug test, and I think I've already said it, I'm the only one that didn't go back to the business after flunking a drug test. So that's not the fatal shot.
Right.
But God had a different plan for me. And I'm fortunate at 62, I can still swing a golf club instead of getting my hips operated on, and I like it very much.
And speaking of drug test failures, I just have to ask you this for the last thing, since it's current. Brock Lesnar, I'm sure you've heard, recently failed his UFC drug tests. And apparently WWE is still going to let him perform at SummerSlam, because I guess there seems to be a different deal for him because he's such a big star. No opinion on that. And is there anything to close this interview off that you want to say to your fans?
Well, I'm just, I'm thrilled to get some exposure in Canada. Of course, the internet goes everywhere, but being born in Canada, and
we're the #1 pro wrestling channel in Canada.
So great to be part of that, and maybe I'll get to come to some autograph shows in Canada.
Very good. Thanks a lot. We very much appreciate you being here.
Thank you guys very much.